Hello and welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm your host, Mike Dever, founder and chief innovation officer of Brandywine Asset Management. And my guest today is Todd Reed of Keller Williams Real Estate. Hello, Todd.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Doing great. How you been?
Hi, I'm doing good. Appreciate you having me on the show today.
Yeah, and no problem at all. And I hear you were on here about a year ago, maybe?
It was last February. I actually looked back at my notes because I wanted to remind myself when it was. So yes, just over a year ago, Mike.
Yeah, so we'll catch up, and I'd love to hear what the state of the market is, and we'll get into that in just a minute. In the meantime, prior to that, I'd like to take our viewer question, which is from Robert Goldberg of Philadelphia. What are some sources where you can check on crypto companies? Okay, I'm going to take that. It really depends on what you mean by checking on it. I interpret that as the companies that are profiting from the crypto industry. So you've got miners, like Bitcoin miners that are out there. And then you've got now this new breed of treasury companies that was led by MicroStrategy, now called Strategy. And so there are a couple sources that you can go to find a list of the treasury companies. The one I looked up that I liked the best was bitcointreasury.net. It lists dozens and dozens of companies that hold Bitcoin in place of cash, or at least in place of some of their cash, in their company's treasuries. So they're in some cases, MicroStrategy, almost entirely dependent, the company value, on the value of that Bitcoin treasury. That was Bitcoin holdings. Others, it's maybe less so. And then the second is the Bitcoin miners. And here you could go to companies like Riot and Marathon. You can go to analyticsinsight.net. I want to make sure I got that correct. And they have a list of the different miners that are out there. And that's a good place to go and kind of get an indication of who the leaders are in the industry, both in the treasury and the mining space. Okay, so now if you'd like to ask a question of Money Matters TV, here's how to send in your question.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Thank you. Welcome back to Money Matters TV. Now we'll have our conversation with Todd. Todd, welcome back in.
Okay, Mike. All right. Thanks.
All right, so my first question is, you were on the show a year ago. What's the status in the local real estate market today, and how does that compare to when you were on the show last?
Not a lot of change. Really no big change in the last year. I know that I spoke then about the lack of inventory in our market, just not enough homes for sale.
And let's get right, we're talking market. We're talking the Philadelphia market area?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. I'm personally just a little bit about an hour east of Philadelphia, Chester County, PA. So, and the whole country has had its inventory problems, but we still have, and that's changed some places, but we still have the problem here, basic supply and demand. We have buyers that want to buy and not enough sellers that want to sell. We still see some bidding wars. I mean, I think that probably hit its height maybe 2 years ago, and I think it has calmed down some, but it still happens. When a property comes up for sale and it's a well-kept property, it's nice, it's clean, it's in a location that's sought after, you still will have some multiple bids on properties. It's not uncommon to see 2, 3, 4, 5 bids on a property at the same time. So that really hasn't changed much in the last year. It's very similar to when I was here a year ago.
So we had friends of ours that sold a house in Swarthmore probably 5 years ago. They listed it around 610, went for 710. It was a one weekend listing where they got over 30
Yes.
offers on it.
Wow.
They had to buy a house, they were downsizing some, and they bought a house in Kennett Square that was listing at 460, paid 530. And when they did that, they asked the realtor who helped them on both ends, when can we expect to get this money back out of it? And she said, I think it's going to be at least 5 years, because the market was so inflated. They just sold that house last year for, I don't know, maybe 100 over what they bought it for.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
continued
It has
to be high
continued.
inflated rates, prices.
I'm sure at that point they were nervous and not happy that they had to pay that much over that seller's asking price. But
Right.
here, like you said, here we are a year later, and it's not like they lost money. Prices haven't went down. I understand that buyers are apprehensive and say, do I really have to go over the seller's asking price and that much over? And will I ever get my money back out of the property? I mean,
Right.
it's a common sense thought, the fear of overpaying. You don't want to overpay. But currently, there's no end in sight. Prices continue to rise. We're year over year appreciation is certainly down in the lower single digits, where we did have a couple years where we were double digits. So
Right.
appreciation is still there. It's definitely a little bit more under control in the last 2 years. I can tell you personally, in the last 2 weeks, my last 2 sales were over at the asking price, but not that much over. Percentage wise, one was 2% over. The other one was about 5%. So, we're not going $100,000 over the already maybe inflated asking price, but it's not uncommon if you're in a multiple bid situation that you have to bid more than the seller's asking, because you can't just say, I'll move on to the next property. Because
the next property is you're going to bid over the asking price for that one too, right? It's
exactly.
So did the interest rates not have any real impact on the pricing? It would seem like with my sons, the 3 of them went together, bought a house in Austin, Texas, right kind of the beginning of COVID. Got a 2.5% mortgage rate on that. It is obviously with rates two times, 2.5 times that now.
Yes. Why
hasn't that had more of an impact on the market?
And tell them to keep that 2.5% interest rate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That one's long gone. Great place, Austin, Texas. Texas, been there a couple of times, so good for them. The height of our market, we hit rates right around 7. And that was, I'd have to say, a year and a half ago. 30-year fixed rates were averaging 7%. Now we're down to right around 6. You can even find high 5. So rates have went down some from that height of 7%. But yeah, Mike, you would think when rates went 2.5 to 7%, absolutely nothing would have been selling. You would have thought that would have killed the market. It really did not have that effect. It's back to the pent-up demand of people that want to buy. Even rates, like you said, 2.5 times rates have went up. They haven't tripled, but they went up 2.5 times what they were. And that did not slow down this. It might have slowed down the market. It did not stop it. Creative programs started coming back. Adjustable rate mortgages made a little bit of a comeback.
Okay.
And what you're seeing, I have multiple friends, of course, that are mortgage lenders. Now they're actually getting some refinances. There were no refinances when rates were 6.5%, 7%.
Sure.
If you got a mortgage at 7, and now maybe you can find 5.75, all of a sudden you're seeing some refinances again.
Because people came in at 7. I mean, obviously when it went from 2.5 to 7, nobody's refinancing. Everybody's already refinanced, at that point.
Yes.
But so even just a 1.5% drop is sufficient to start some refinancings now.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I know that activity has picked up. Yes.
How about the variable? You're talking about the variable rate stuff that's coming back into the market. Is that amounting to much yet, or is that still just a small fraction? It's not like it was, I'm guessing, in the mid 2000s prior to the big housing bust.
You're right. It's just a small fraction. But builders tend to find creative ways to move new construction homes. They'll do what they call temporary interest rate buy down. So the first and second year, you might get a break on the interest rate. And then years 3 through 30, it's back at the typical market rate. So let's say the rate was 6.5%. Maybe year one, that buyer gets 4.5%, year two, 5.5%, and then years 3 through 30 back to 6.5%. But that temporary buy down, that builders would pay some additional fees to buy that interest rate down for those first 2 years. That's a great program for the right type of buyer. Maybe you have a buyer recently out of college. They have a job with a base pay that they know is going to increase within the next 2 or 3 years. So when the payment and the interest rate and the payment go up on them next year or the year after, they're not really that concerned about it. They really were enticed by that low introductory rate.
Yeah, I really view it more as a bet on interest rates in a way, because I get that. It's, you could pay down the mortgage, you could just lower the price of the house. It's all kind of the same. I view it as kind of a bet that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when that teaser rate runs off, you can refinance at a lower rate. You're going to get 4.5 maybe instead of 6.5.
Exactly, Mike. Now I'm gonna say, and I'm probably near the end of my career because I've been doing this for 4+ decades, but I can guarantee you that the rest of my career, we're not going to see that 2.5 interest rate you're talking about again. Right. When we had 2.5, 3% for a decade plus, I mean, that was a long run, but I can't see how that comes back again. But hey, I'd love to see 4.5, 5% after touching 7. That's just that 2.5, 3% world. I don't know what it's going to take for us to get there again, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. But you're right. If you were a person that got that 6.5, 7% rate, you probably knew in your mind, or you were being told, or the thinking was that rates will certainly come down within the next year or two, and we can refinance. And that's exactly what we're seeing now.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a mortgage. You've got a free option on it. You can refinance, and it's you're not locked in. At least with residential mortgages, it might be a different story with commercial, but you've got that ability of refinancing. So a lot of people might be hesitant at first when the rates went up to purchase homes, but ultimately they kind of look at it and go, okay, but it gets me in before home prices go up even more, and I've still got that option to refinance. Now,
that's exactly correct.
Is the price support then, because we've had higher interest rates, people kind of price things off of what their monthly payment is. The monthly payments have gone up, which means they've got less to buy the house, so the house price should be less, but house prices have continued to appreciate, as you point out. Is that then purely a supply issue? We just don't have enough houses being built?
It's definitely a supply issue. Not only don't we have enough homes being built, we haven't had enough homes being built for about the last 15 years. And this is a cumulative effect of that. And use the word affordable. In my particular area, there is a decent amount of new construction, but I'll tell you, Mike, most of it's 700, 800, 900,000, $1 million. If you say I want to go out and buy a new home around where I'm at for 400,000, it basically just doesn't exist. You're just not going to find it. You're forced to go into the resale market. Supply continues to be the problem. And until that changes, that means just prices continue to go up. And again, their interest rates didn't stop a thing. You have a higher percentage of sales that are cash sales, where the buyer's not getting a mortgage at all. Some of the, I'll say maybe more of the baby boomer generation, they've built a lot of equity in their current home or prior homes, and they're sitting on a lot of equity. So when they want to buy another home, maybe they go to a 55+ community, a high percentage of those sales are cash, because those buyers have plenty of equity in their current home. And assuming they have investment accounts and 401ks, we know that they've done pretty well the last 20 years. So those folks have cash.
You've got essentially the haves and have-nots. And if you had real estate investments, you had equity investments, stock market investments, you've done phenomenally well over the last 20 years. If you're new and you haven't had that ability of building that asset base, you can't get into it easily right now. It's so pricey. And I think I was reading that the affordability index on homes is at one of its highest levels since in recorded history. Like it's at 125% or something price to like normal whatever value is required to buy that home.
Yes.
That a lot of people are just, and it's the younger ones that haven't had the chance to build those assets, are just totally priced out of the market entirely.
And that you're right. And you're right about say the haves and have nots. And that is a fact. Again, the way things have changed for me over the decades, when I would get a buyer that didn't have a lot of money saved for a down payment, we would tell them, hey, go into a rental for a year or two, sock away some money, and then come back and buy a house at that point. But even the rental market is so high around here, that to pay $2,800, $3,500 a month rent is kind of normal where I'm at. And, if you're paying $3,000-$4,000 a month in rent, unless you really have a huge income, it's hard to save any money towards that down payment. And I hate to say stuck, but a lot of these folks are stuck in the rental world. And that's one reason why the first time home buyer percentage of the market is almost at an all-time low. The first time home buyers are roughly 1/3 of the market. And that's a low number.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I could see why. We've got friends of ours where the children have come back from college, moved back in with the parents. They have full-time jobs. They're making good money, but it's specifically to be able to save for housing.
Yes.
Yeah, because as you point out, the rental market's kind of as bad as the housing market price-wise. It's difficult to find inexpensive housing. Do you have any solution for the younger buyer?
I tell you, one solution is exactly what you just said. I think if you polled all the people that you just talked about that finished college and moved back in with their parents, and you asked them, was your first choice to move back home in your parents' basement? I'm pretty sure 99.9% of them would have said no. However, that's a great option because now, again, like you said, they're out of college. They have good jobs. They have good income. So now they can sock some money away. And hey, I'm not saying live with the parents for 5 years, but if you're making good money and you're managing your budget properly, in a year or two, you can save a lot of money. So what you just said there, that's one perfect thing that folks can do to save some money. If you have to bite the bullet, live with the parents another year or two and save some money, because when you're out there and you're the buyer, and especially if you're in a competitive bid situation, the more money you have down, the lower your mortgage payment, number one. Number two, the better you look to the seller. So you can still get mortgages. There are still mortgages out there that exist with 0% down, or maybe only 3.5% or 5% down. Those mortgages exist.
What are they paying on those? What's kind of mortgage rate if you're putting 0% down? Same
interest rate. So no different, just special programs for certain type of people. Some might have income limits. You have to watch that. Income limits typically go county to county. Again, Chester County here is a pretty expensive county, so the income limits can be pretty high. So they really don't change the rate. But the other part of that, remember, if you're in a competitive bid situation, the seller wants the most solid buyer that they can find. So obviously they're looking at price first. Hey, who's the highest bidder? But other than that, is they want to know they have a nice solid deal. Are
you able to bring a package to these people? As you're describing this, I'm thinking, okay, I'm a young buyer. I don't have a lot of money for a down payment. I've got a decent income going. Do you provide like a holistic service where you can say, okay, I'm going to help you with the mortgage. I'm going to find the affordable property, not just, go out there and show them around some houses?
Well, I mean, Mike, that's what we try to do every day. I mean, that's my job is to be able to help those folks out. But there are times when there's only so much I could do. If a property has 5 bids on it, and let's say they're all the same price, one offer is all cash. One offer, the buyer only needs a 50% down mortgage because they have half of the sale price in cash. And my third buyer only has $30,000 saved. If you're the seller, you're looking at those multiple buyers, And again, you want the cleanest, most solid deal you can find. You don't want to worry for 30 days. What if they can't get a mortgage? What if one of the folks loses their job? Then they certainly can't get a mortgage. So when you're bidding against people with a lot more cash than you have, you're in a tough spot.
Yeah, no, somebody I work with here at Brandywine just bought a house. He's moving into a different school district, and he did it with essentially no contingencies, no home inspection, no
Yes.
financing contingency.
Yes.
He's got essentially a $40,000 down payment on the hook. He's got to complete that transaction. And I guess by what you're saying, it's very difficult, you find something you want at a price you want, you just pull out all the stops to make sure you get it, and somebody else doesn't leapfrog you with just a cleaner offer. And that which kind of brings you to the question. I mean, what can buyers do to better position themselves in a competitive market like this? What, aside from just removing all contingencies and paying down, big chunk of cash.
Well, yeah, and you're right with what you just said. The seller again looking for that cleaner buyer, and it is common in today's market to waive inspections. Prior to the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, 95% of my buyers would want to do a home inspection and a termite inspection if a property had a well water test, a septic system inspection. They would do all those inspections. That was typical for our industry.
Are they still doing radon? That was like a big thing I remember for a while.
Yeah, it's an option. Yeah. It's optional, but yes, you certainly can. Again, the problem becomes when you're competitive and you have a couple other offers in. One of those buyers here's the buyer that gets the property right now. It's usually the buyer that's more frustrated than the other buyers. Maybe they've already bid on 2, 3, 4 properties.
Right.
They've been outbid. Their bid initially did include inspections. And after losing a couple properties, that buyer's frustrated. And now they're saying, hey, I'm getting the next property. I'll do whatever I have to do. So I'll waive the mortgage contingency. I'll waive all the inspections. We'll even let the seller stay in the property 30 or 60 days after closing if they need to. The buyer that is a little bit more desperate than the other buyers, they make their offer very clean, and that's who is winning on these bidding war properties.
Okay. Now, do you have any properties that are maybe not so competitive in that way? I mean, are there the fixer-uppers?
Yes.
What can somebody that's new coming into the market, what can they take advantage of, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, Mike, yes. So, and I don't want to be misunderstood here. Not every single property that goes on the market gets 5 bids. Let's say a property that needs some TLC, you hit the nail on the head. It needs paint, it needs carpets. Not every property is perfect. Yes, those are the type of properties where the buyer might have a better opportunity. It's really the properties that are in pristine condition. They're basically, it's a used property maybe that looks like a builder's model home. All of us, I don't want to say that we're lazy, but we don't necessarily have time or sometimes the ability to rehab or fix up a property. We just don't want to do it. It admittedly is a headache. It's nice to move right into the property and turn on the TV, put our feet up and not have to do any work. But if you do have a buyer that's willing to do some work, maybe they're handy, maybe they have parents and friends and relatives that are handy. If that buyer is willing to buy a property that needs that tender loving care, that's one advantage they would have, because not every property is getting the multiple bids. The other part of that is pricing, Mike. So even some of these TLC properties, if it's priced properly, so let's say it's priced a little bit lower than maybe you would expect it to be, that creates a bidding war mentality because, hey, this is a good deal and I'm willing to do some paint and carpets. I'll do some work to this property. So some of those properties still get the bidding war. So what the buyer can do is be more flexible. Maybe they'll go further away from their job. When I get a buyer initially, they might say, I need to be within a 20-minute drive to my work. And then they find out within 20 minutes, we're kind of priced out of that market. We can't find anything they like. So then we say, all right, we'll go 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. Maybe they decide I'll take the train to work. The buyers have to be more flexible. They're not getting everything they want. The other
Right.
thing, which I didn't hit on, Mike, I meant to say was what else you asked me, what else the buyer could do, credit score. So some of your interest rates are credit score driven, interest rates and fees. So if you know that you have a credit score today, maybe without giving you a specific number, maybe it's in the 600s. It can be better. Take a few months and improve that credit score and get it up maybe from the mid 600s into the 700s. That helps that buyer also. They're better positioned for better terms when it comes time to get a mortgage.
Is it possible, when you're talking about some of these like fixer uppers, is it possible to buy a fixer upper, not do the sweat equity in it, actually hire contractors to do the equity and come out ahead? Or does that end up adding as much money as if you bought a fixed up house to start with?
Yeah, Mike, it's not easy to come out ahead. Again, I remember time frames of my career where, hey, that was the way to go. Even the flippers, the professionals right now, they're having trouble finding a property cheap enough that they can renovate it and flip it and make enough profit.
Okay.
So that's not easy to do. That's not
Yeah.
an easy task.
Well, what would be, if you had one specific piece of advice you could give someone that's coming into the market, what would that be?
Well, kind of what we hit on, maybe a little more flexibility than you wanted to have. A perfect example is a home that I just sold to a couple. Their original criteria, because they already have 2 children and they need an in-home office, their original criteria was, hey, 4-bedroom minimum. And when we were looking at 4-bedroom minimums, we weren't finding anything in their price range that we liked. So we changed that to a 3-bedroom minimum, and we just got a beautiful property under contract for them, and it's only 3 bedrooms, and yeah, they're going to find a way to make that work. There's kind of an area in the home where he's going to move his office, or it's not the perfect private bedroom type office, but they were flexible. These buyers need to be flexible. Maybe go further away than you wanted from where you work. Maybe change your bedroom criteria. I know we all look at school districts, and you were worried about our children, and you say, I really only want to be in this school district or that school district. But flexibility, and the buyers have to be flexible today, and maybe change your criteria. Hey, I can't live without a 2-car garage. You know what? Maybe you can. Maybe a 1-car garage, you can make that work. Flexibility is key for these buyers.
Okay. Todd, I appreciate it. A lot of good insight. It is, we know, a very competitive market out there, and it's good to have people like you that can really help guide people through the whole process.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it. Thanks for your time on the show.
All right, Mike. Appreciate you having me.
Very good. Our next guest on Money Matters TV is Scott Reidenbach, Esquire of Reidenbach and Associates, and Law Talk. Until then, thank you for watching Money Matters TV, where your money matters. See you next time.